It's no secret that Donald Trump prioritizes the internet. He won the 2024 election by going on different podcasts and infiltrating non political spaces. And now that he is the president again, they are still utilizing the internet in order to push their agenda and build approval amongst their base. They're doing this by submitting highlight reels of deportations on their Truth and X accounts. They are utilizing conservative pundits and conservative influencers to try to generate buzz around certain policy objectives. And now we're seeing Nick Shirley, James O'Keefe, Benny Johnson, and other conservative YouTubers utilize the power of the internet and virality to try to spread lies and misinformation about many liberal areas across the country. Right now, the biggest priority is in California, where Nick Shirley, Benny Johnson, and a list of others are pushing the idea that California does not have secure elections. Only issue is, all of these videos are full of lies. So, Nick Shirley, viral right wing YouTuber, is going viral again. We know previously he spent a lot of time in Minnesota where he was going over fraud cases, and some cases were already resolved by the state of Minnesota. These are fraud cases that were known about that he's regurgitating as if it's evidence that there's new fraud, or he made up fraud completely. It was a lot of speculation. They went to daycares when they weren't in their hours of operation. They were shoving cameras in the face of employees, and when those employees were rightfully worried, they said, haha, you don't have any kids here. This is fraud. You're using taxpayer money. A lot of insane things. That viral video, full of lies and misconstructions, led to Operation Metro Surge, which was Trump sending in thousands of ICE agents that led to the deaths of Renee Good, Alex Preddy, and the terrorization of Minneapolis neighborhoods. Now, Nick Shirley is doing that exact same playbook in California. He is following James O'Keefe's old playbook to a T and using rumor and speculation to try to instill fear in Republican populations. In Nick Shirley's California videos, he suggests that there's widespread voter fraud in every precinct in the state. But when we look closely at the evidence, and according to reporting from Media Matters, Nick Shirley is literally just rebooting James O'Keefe's debunked voter fraud myths for a new audience. James O'Keefe created the template for undercover videos meant to expose and embarrass liberal organizations and causes. His old videos, like Shirley's new ones, were frequently debunked in real time, but they nevertheless served a role in providing fuel to conservative content creators hungry to stoke outrage about perceived liberal excesses. Shirley's repackaging shouldn't be surprising given the incentives for young, MAGA aligned influencers to make a name for themselves in a crowded field. But the original claims didn't provoke any policy changes, reasonably so, given that they were bogus. So Shirley's repackaging has little to offer beyond a hope that new consumers take the bait. Shirley's video is one of many from right-wing influencers such as Benny Johnson decrying supposedly rampant voter fraud in California, and it includes many examples and myths that have already been debunked. One of the most prominent narratives in Shirley's video, which was already debunked when Johnson spread it, is that voters whose registrations listed central locations, like an abandoned building, as an address are a clear sign of fraud. However, as Democracy Docket notes, California law gives people experiencing homelessness the flexibility to use any location to register to vote, as long as unhoused residents can describe the place where they spend their most time, whether it's an address, a cross street, or a vacant lot. They can legally list it as their address on their voter registration form. Another one of Shirley's key examples of fraud in the video is a previously reported story about a woman who registered her dog to vote and cast two ballots for him in 2021 and 2022. Only one of them were counted. The woman, a registered Republican, self reported her crimes and is facing 6 years in prison. I mean, that proves it right there. California takes voter fraud seriously. They prosecute people who are perpetrators of this type of fraud. The premise of his videos is that there could potentially be fraud. They don't have actual evidences of it. And the evidence that they do have that was genuine voter fraud shows that the state handled it accordingly. Because anytime there's fraud that's exposed, the state of California will handle that with repercussions. The investigation offers no substantial evidence. It is all hypotheticals instead of proofs. He walks through scenarios that could potentially happen, but provides no evidence of systemic fraud actually occurring. He uses legal practices that are framed as suspicious. For example, homeless individuals registering to vote using shelters, he says, is immediate fraud, even though it's legal under California law. He uses isolated cases that are presented as widespread, including that woman registering her dog to vote. That is not a widespread story. And if there were people that were registering fake people, they would be given the same consequences that that woman was. That's the pattern. There are rare cases, people that are already caught, already punished, and those are presented as if it's proof that there is a massive system failure. If this type of framing feels familiar, it's because we've seen the same playbook before. Again, James O'Keefe, Project Veritas, Benny Johnson, all of these people suggest wrongdoing without actually proving that it's happening. They film confrontations with people, they go to people's places of work, ask aggressive and assertive questions with the camera in their face, and they use dramatic editing to get the audience to assume the worst possible scenario. That type of video format and formula doesn't require any evidence. It all just requires implication, speculation, and rumor. And that implication spreads fast, especially when most of these videos are receiving millions and millions of views because they are pushed by people like Elon Musk, Vice President JD Vance, as Nick Shirley's video in Minnesota was pushed by the Vice President of the United States. And that matters a lot more than an actual investigation because it changes the mind of millions of people. Now, I know what most conservative viewers watching this right now are thinking. This guy's super liberal. He's super biased. He's not taking James O'Keefe or Nick Shirley or Benny Johnson seriously. Okay, fine. Let's look at a conservative think tank. You heard of the Heritage Foundation? It's the exact same conservative think tank and policy administration that pushed Project 2025. They were the architects, the drafters of that. So, conservative organization, self admittedly. This is what they said about election fraud. They have a portal on their website called the Election Fraud Map that goes over different election fraud in different states. And if we go to California, we can see from 1982 to 2025. I repeat, from 1982 to 2025, that's more than 43 years documented. There have been 71 results of voter fraud. So that's the actual evidence. Nick Shirley and Benny Johnson won't show you that. They'll say, "Oh my gosh, a woman registered her dog to vote. There must be millions of people that are voting illegally in California." Actually, the conservative think tank, the Heritage Foundation, shows there are 71 results. You can see all of these results because this country takes voter fraud very seriously. We do not want to have illegitimate elections. The United States has always presented itself as the leading democracy and leading legal institution to push some sort of democratic representation. But these are multiple studies. It's not just the Heritage Foundation, it's also the Brennan Center, it's multiple state election officials across party lines. They've all found the same thing. Voter fraud in the United States is extremely rare. When it does happen, it's typically isolated, it's usually caught, and it is prosecuted. There are consequences for falsifying records in elections. The system already has safeguards in place, but viral videos don't show what those safeguards are, or they don't show people who have already been implicated. They show the suspicion. These videos don't need to prove fraud. That's not their intention. Their intention is to sow doubt in the mind of the viewers that watch them. They want conservative voters to be skeptical of their own election processes. One, to give justification and to give excuse when Republicans lose elections. And two, to push them to actually accept stricter voting laws. They want things like voter repression, voter roll purges, aggressive ID enforcement, ICE agents that are patrolling poll stations like Donald Trump has suggested, even immigration enforcement escalations. We've all seen what happens when people are convinced that elections are stolen. January 6th happens. We see insurrections on federal buildings that are supposed to be securing legitimate election processes. The impact is not just online, it's not just people complaining on social media. This shapes policy, it shapes voter turnout, and it shapes who gets to participate in democracy. You don't have to rig an election if you can convince people that the system is not to be trusted. I mean, just look at the editing style of this video.
Fraud story taking place in America, one tied to the most consequential system in our country, which is our voting system. This has to do with everything about who runs the country and how elections are actually controlled. And if we don't have voter integrity, what even are we? And there's one state that is the breeding ground.
I'm laughing because like he can't really read the script that fluidly, which I shouldn't laugh about. But the second thing is this like a Stranger Things highlight? What is this music in the background? This is what they operate on. They want to dramatize anything that they can within the video to make it in the mind of the viewer. This is scary. This is a really bad situation. I need to take this seriously. My state is committing fraud. Oh my God. It is like the most emotional manipulation that's now being done at a political level. It's not just movies or suspense films. Nick Shirley. It's Nick Shirley trying to convince you that you need more voter ID laws. So when you see these viral investigations, ask yourself one question. Is the person actually showing you legitimate evidence of fraud, or are they just selling you suspicion, framing, and dramatic editing? because this is the goal of this playbook, is to get in the mind of the viewer that something is afoot and they need to fill the gaps in with their own imagination. It's not about actually proving fraud. If you convince enough people that the system is illegitimate and they need to be paranoid about every aspect of their voting process, then that changes the rules of democracy entirely.